We are continuing our studies of this idea of ascending spiritually into light and also physiologically into our health, and how these two are always intertwined. By using yoga, we are going to look at how we can actually heal our emotions and be vibrantly healthy emotionally and spiritually by using asanas and breath and vinyasas in our bodies. So this week we are on the hips, and we're going to be continuing on the hips for a few weeks. So I've asked you to read from Anatomy of the Spirit, your second chakra, and in reading that, to understand how powerful and important it is to have this part of our bodies healed, and to know that as we ascend spiritually, this is something we'll probably revisit many, many times, but to begin by really having an understanding of how important it is to be healthy in this foundational aspect of our emotionality. And then also looking at the other book I've recommended for your yoga library, but I think this should also be in your human library, by Liz Koch, the psoas book, and how we can just see how emotionally our body is affected. So specifically last week and this week, we're looking at the psoas muscles, this in this hip region, and we're looking at the iliacus and the relationship between trying to create a softness and fluidity and juiciness in this hip region of our body and these muscles, and to look at emotionally how we can create a softness around this as well. So the two words I'd like you to remember from this week is rigidity versus fluidity. And we're going to look at that in our bodies and how important it is to, again, keep the psoas muscle juicy and soft. We're going to look at poses like up dog and how we're going to drop the hips down and try to breathe and really soften into the front of our hips in order to expand and create healthy lower backs. And in doing that, we're also going to look at what emotionally happens when we can use our bodies and movements in order to release this sedentary way of living, these armored spines and hip areas, and to start to open them up through softness and movement. And at the same time, looking at our lives from an emotional perspective, and how can I begin to create more softness in how I show up for these second chakra areas of my life. And as we do that, I want you to think of, and this is, again, I'm quoting Liz Koch. This week we looked at Carolyn Meese, Liz Koch, Dr. Sarno's work, and we looked at Sthirabhaga, the strength and grace of Ashtanga. And we looked at this idea of, as Liz said, that our spine should be like a fish or like a moving river. And then the gentleman who was interviewing her said, oh, like water, like seaweed in water. And it's a beautiful visual to think of fluidity, like not just in my yoga practice and in my hips, but how am I fluid in my life? How am I fluid as I look at my work, my vocation, my creativity, how I look in my relationships? Am I controlling? Again, we look at second chakra stuff, they fit together so beautifully. Am I controlling and harsh and over stressing and over trying and angry and frustrated? Or am I able to move into that fluid, like letting go and being in the flow of what's happening in my life? So join me for conference. You can always just listen to conference as an audio or like a podcast. There is one video that you might want to watch that's part of our conference this week, which is hula dancing. We have a video with some very special movement in the hips and looking at our hip area, and also how the arms of the hula dancers are moving like water, and their feet. I love watching their feet. It's everything we've been studying for the last 4 weeks. So there's so much there, so much this week. I do hope you will join us for the entire conference. Have a wonderful, wonderful week of assessing and expressing your fluidity.